Welcome to the Life After Life podcast, where we explore our soul's physical and non-physical journey. I'm Majona. Let's discuss angels, guides, and loved ones from the other side. And welcome back! I think before we go any further with these podcasts, it might be really a great idea, thank you for this one, Thomas, to give you an idea of my perspective. Where are we coming from with these podcasts? So I was raised first, very in my early years, Baptist and then Lutheran. So most of the influence was Lutheran. Very strict Missouri Synod. And at the same time, I was having all of these experiences and connections with all of these beings that are not from this plane. And I was not understanding where they were coming from. I didn't know where to get those answers. And it certainly was not coming from those answers weren't coming from church or Sunday school. So at an early age, I started really reading. And what would happen is something would happen, a premonition or a spirit would show up, something that would really prompt me into going, what was that? And what's this all about? So I couldn't find answers, and I started looking ravenously for answers anywhere. I have some resources for you that hopefully, if you're kind of looking at the same thing, some of these books I read as they showed up on my journey, and then others are more recent, but I just think that they're really great and address some of these topics beautifully. So one of my first books about life after life or near-death experiences was actually by Dr. Raymond Moody. And I don't know if he was the first to write on this topic, but things show up in your life when they're supposed to and the way they're supposed to. And this book was there right when I needed it. It was actually Life After Life is the title of that book. And I promise I did not remember that when we named this podcast. So that was a foot in the door, I think, for me, trying to explain some of this. And then in college, as I was trying to figure out more, I went into kind of a different religious text. And we're not going to get into a comparative religion topic or discussions here. And what I came to was that there's validity in all of them, certainly all the major religions of the world, and they all have a common thread. And then they sort of branch off from that, and then your beliefs are kind of, which one do you want to follow? But the main idea is pretty consistent. So that became, I guess, maybe reaffirming, and I felt better about it at that time. And then, ironically, I hit a point in college that I was tired of heavy studying. I was tired of reading heavy texts. And I have no idea how this book showed up for me, but Shirley MacLaine's book, Out on a Limb. And that was my first really time that I read something and I thought, wow, this reincarnation thing, I really never gave it much thought, even though in some of the spiritual texts, it's definitely there. So again, everything shows up for a reason. And it's a light book to read, certainly, definitely different than a spiritual text. But it was very pivotal for me, and that was, again, Shirley MacLaine's Out on a Limb. Since then, we have found Michael Newton, who was a clinical hypnotherapist. And again, this helps with some of the past life things. He fell into that, not intentionally, but through hypnosis, his clients would go further and further back and went between lives and then into previous lives. So the fact that, he's a clinical hypnotherapist, and there's extensive talks he's on YouTube, he has books. So there's some really good information there. And then another one that I think is just really terrific and near and dear to our hearts is Frederick Dodson's Lives of the Soul. And Thomas is the narrator of those audiobooks.
Buy the book. Audiobook.
Oh, listen to that voice.
That changed my life. That book answered so many questions for me that coming up from my Baptist fundamental background total game changer.
It is, and it puts it in a very easy to understand language, very non-threatening. And what I love and find so interesting about Fred is when we've had just a couple conversations with some very similar experiences growing up. And as I will talk about in another podcast, when I realized that not everybody had these same experiences was when my sister said to me, there is something wrong with you. Normal people don't do that. And it took me, I was so taken aback. And so as I was looking for answers and trying to find books, and there just weren't that many books out there, it was very hard to find my specific answers. My conclusion was, oh my gosh, my sister's right. There is something wrong with me. Fred was looking for the same books, and he couldn't find them. So his angle was, well, they're not out there. It's mine to write. I love that.
Different perspective. He's done so many on so many different topics, but the great thing about Lives of the Soul is it's a quick listen. He goes straight in, does not waste any time, gets the point done, and it's less than really 4 hours, and you've got the whole concept.
Yeah. And like I said, if you commute or you like audiobooks, I've got the man for you right here. These are available on Audible.
Yes, audible.com, and that's, of course, an Amazon company. They're also on iTunes. You can pick them up over there. So Audible and iTunes, and love to have you check them out.
Yes, it's good stuff. So I hope that at least this is, we've given you a few resources. If you are having questions, you're like, how does all this fit into place? And just looking for some answers. As I'm talking with you, I'm sharing my path. And what I came to conclude in college as I was doing comparative religion studies was, oh my gosh, overload. There's so much out there that we cannot possibly piece it all together. We just can't. There's too many layers. And I decided, we are spiritual beings, but we're here on this planet. We chose to come here and have an earthly experience. And we chose to block that. We have all of that, the knowledge innately, because that's who we are. And yet when we come to this planet, we choose to forget that. And we're not supposed to spend our entire life here trying to regain that. We're supposed to live this experience. And so my conclusion was, all right, I can't get all of that. So what do I get? That I have these experiences. I see spirits. I talk to angels and guides, and I have amazing intuition and premonitions and some things that I don't necessarily like or want or understand, and yet that's what I have, so I need to deal with that. And then later I embraced it. And then the other piece that I decided was, you know what, our job here on this earth is to be the best we can be, to continue to grow. It's all about growth, and the basis is always love. So that is what we strive for. And then when I look at all the other stuff, what is true, what is not true, what do I do, who's right, who's wrong, the answer is yes. The answer is just yes. There's an element of truth probably in just about everything, as long as it is based in love. And that's the foundation, I think, of my life for sure. As long as it's based in love, I'm open and I'm willing to explore that. And if it's not of love, it's not welcome. So I hope this gives you a little insight as to my perspective and how these podcasts, the angle of the podcast will come from. This is just I'm sharing my journey and my lessons with you. And I love if you're willing to come along with me, and I will not try to convince you or change your mind on anything. Take what resonates with you. So, I would love to hear your stories, your questions. You can get a hold of Thomas and I at Majona at lifeafterliferadio.com. And until the next time, Namaste.